Most people, when they do triceps, they're always focused on stereotyped movements like the cable pushdowns or the skull crushers. But a lot of my clients, have complained about how some of those movements really overwhelm the elbow joint and they have some aches and pains. So in this video, we're going to talk about the most hardcore tricep exercise you can do for powerlifting that not a lot of people do. And we're also going to include a hardcore bicep exercise you should do, because at the end of the day, some of the pains could come from an imbalance on opposing sides of the anatomy. So we'll make sure we talk about that and some of the reasons why this exercise I bring up is so important for powerlifting. So like I mentioned before, a lot of us are used to push downs or skull crushers. Just to review those real quick. The cable push down, the cable's anchored at the top. You get like a straight bar or a rope and you extend your arms down. With the skull crusher, you're like in a bench press position, but with a cable, a bar, or dumbbells, you allow your forearms to go back and forward. So all the pressure is on the elbow joint. Now, when I say pressure, it sounds like a bad thing, but it doesn't have to be. But one of the common themes amongst the push down and the skull crushers is they're both single joint movements. So they're isolating movements. What that means is they only recruit one joint, because when you want to work your triceps, most people think, okay, I'm just going to work my elbow in a stationary position so that I work most of my tricep. But don't forget, not only do single joint movements work, but multi-joint compound movements work as well. And a compound movement is when you use more than two joints, two or more joints, and multiple muscles come along with that as well. I think the single joint exercises like the skull crushers and the push downs have so many issues because the elbow is being directly punished in a way. And I think we're so pre-fatigued from all of the things we do before then that it makes it such a hard movement to perform after the fact. And I do think that the angles that the triceps might be in, or rather the elbow joint might be in, could be a little more of a vulnerable position. So the most hardcore movements you can use in a program don't always have to be single joint. They could be compound multi-joint movements as well. So you can displace weight amongst other parts of the anatomy as well. Now, the reason why this hardcore exercise I chose works so well too, is because when you do it, you are putting your elbow joint in a more vulnerable position, but because it's a multi-joint, all other muscles can be worked as well. But because our elbow is in a specific position, it's highly recruiting the triceps as well. The most hardcore tricep exercise you can use, in my opinion, for powerlifting would be the JM press. So the JM press is like a hybrid of a bench press and like a skull crusher. So instead of just moving your forearms, and instead of just bench pressing, you're going to bench press where you would end that position of that skull crusher. So some people might bench press, and that means that they're moving their shoulder and elbow joint, aiming for like their forehead, their nose, their chin, their collarbone. I have a lot of my clients do the JM press to the chin. So it's a compound movement. It uses your shoulder joint, your elbow joint, and it's going to recruit those pressing muscles like the chest, the deltoids, the triceps. But when you change your pressing position from, instead of hitting that sternum, the lower part of your sternum, instead of hitting here and hitting your chin now, you'll notice that your elbow is out of position and it pokes out. For weight training to work, a lot of people try to focus on parallel and perpendicular relationships. So like when I bench like this, it's opposing my upper body. So now I'm making that 90-degree angle. But now if I change my aim point, like I do with the JM press, I bring it down to like my chin. Now my forearms, my upper arm, they're diagonal to the floor. And it's very weird. But when you do this, it's overloading your triceps. And what's another great thing about the JM press is that it gets to overload your movement because it's a multi-joint movement. And since it's replicating a pressing motion, it makes more sense to add to your bench press to make that a movement as well. And we all know that the triceps are such a huge factor in how much power we generate off our chest. So I do believe that the JM press, if you use it correctly and perform it correctly, can be the most hardcore exercise for your triceps for powerlifting performance. But Remember, if you work one side of the anatomy, you got to work the other. So I would tell you that a complementary bicep exercise you should do for that kind of movement would be the dumbbell hammer curl. And I love the dumbbell hammer curl because what happens is when you go in an underhand position curl or an overhand position, you're neglecting certain parts of the anatomy you couldn't get from a neutral position. So most people curl underhand. But if you change the position right here, you're starting to recruit a few more muscles than you would normally. So you can even feel it if you touch your bicep here and then rotate your grip, you'll feel the bicep lengthen. And it's because where it inserts on the forearm, when you rotate, that bone moves over and it stretches that bicep muscle more. When you do the hammer curl, you're recruiting the biceps, the long head, the short head, but you're also incorporating a deep muscle called the brachialis. And what that muscle does underneath is it's actually stronger than your biceps. When you do a neutral grip hammer curl, you're making that brachialis muscle stronger, which is the most powerful flexor of the arm, to aid with your bench pressing precision. With every action is a reaction. When you come down and you bench, not only is your chest working, but your back has to work to decelerate the weight. When you bench press, your triceps are working, but your biceps help decelerate the weight. So if I do a lot of hammer curls, I'm making this bicep and arm muscles stronger so I can decelerate and hold more weight. And when you do this hammer curl, you're also working the brachioradialis muscle, which is right here on top of the forearm, which could give the illusion that your arm's a lot bigger than it is otherwise. So again, the most hardcore exercise you should do for triceps would be the JM press. And to couple that with a great bicep exercise, I would say the dumbbell hammer curl, just to allow you to be stronger, have fuller arms, and to be prepared for bench pressing power. If you like this video and want to learn more, check us out at powerliftingtechnique.com, and hopefully we can catch you next time.